What we're talking about is the St. Patrick's Day promotion, and it's really a combination of a basic promotion, but also just kind of explaining some of the major characteristics that should be incorporated with any promotion. And we've added a few more than what we typically do, some key components, and obviously the more key components you do and the more effective you do them, the more effective the campaign is. So having said that, typically, remember, we're always going to want to leverage national events. And so St. Patrick's Day is a national event, and we always want to have an in-office promotion every month. And so this is the St. Patrick's Day promotion. And remember, we talked about there's five major categories of getting business with marketing, which is the introductions, which are where there's high trust and there's higher need. And then we talked about active referrals, in other words, creating business as opposed to waiting it, creating referrals. And then passive referrals is just, giving enough service that it eventually comes in, but that's a very low form, low percentage wise, but when it comes in, it's a high percentage. And we talked about there's a 75% chance of getting business with introductions. There's up to 55% chance with active passive referrals. And then it drops significantly if your marketing system is a lead system, down to 15% and down to 1% with cold call systems. And that's because of two major factors: low trust if you're in cold calls versus high trust if you're in an introduction. And then if there's actually a need for that product or service that you have. Where in an introduction you can find out, is there a need? Cold call, you don't even know at all. So those are the two characteristics. That's why we want to always make sure we're maximizing the value for the introductions. And there's really only 5 types of introduction marketing. After the existing client, there's the spouse, the children, there's what's called the circle of influence, which is, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, but the average person has 7 people in their circle of influence where there's higher trust, higher need, but also where that person's willing to actually do something. And that's a major factor versus what's called an outside circle of influence. So you have to know the difference, because it's 2 totally different marketing systems when it comes to active referrals. And we go into that in detail with referrals. And then there's the leads, which is only about 35% to cold call, 15% to cold calls, which is 1%. So the introduction systems are the spouse potential business. And remember, every one of these categories fits into the S curve. They're either an 8%er within the 12 months, or they're on the right side of that S curve. They're a 92%er, and 25% of them are not going to have a gateway, back or neck pain. And so that leaves about, so you take out 25% from 92, and you're down around 68%, something like that. Well, 68% is a way bigger number than 8%, where advertising will only get to 8%, but educational sales will get can go into the 68% category. So there's way more opportunity in educational sales than advertising, if you know what you're doing. And so we talk about the spouse, the child, the circle of influence, and then your past patients, and then specifically of your past patients, your 20%ers, or what we call the VIPs. So we're paying a lot of attention to these 5 categories in marketing, because that's where the highest probability of business is going to be.